Misogynist laughs at woman in a meeting, then her response goes viral. The conference room buzzed with anticipation as members of the executive team filtered in, each carrying stacks of folders and laptops. The large glass windows let in the mid-morning sunlight, casting long shadows across the polished table. At the far end of the room, a young woman named Erin double-checked her notes, her hands trembling ever so slightly as she flipped through the neatly printed pages. She adjusted the collar of her blazer and took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. This was her moment. After months of research, late nights, and endless revisions, Erin finally had the opportunity to present her innovative proposal to the company's leadership. It was a chance to not only make her mark but also prove her worth in a room full of seasoned executives. She knew her idea was solid, something that could revolutionize the company's approach to its lagging digital strategy. But knowing she had something valuable to share didn't erase the weight of the skepticism she often faced. Across the room, seated near the head of the table, was Jared, the company's VP of Operations. Jared was a tall man with sharp features and a permanent smirk that seemed to radiate entitlement. He was known for his dismissive attitude, particularly toward younger employees and women. Erin had seen him cut people down in meetings before, his sarcastic quips and derisive laughter shutting down ideas before they even had a chance to bloom. He had been at the company for over a decade and seemed to relish the power dynamics that kept him on top. As the last few people took their seats, Jared leaned back in his chair, spinning a pen between his fingers. His gaze landed on Erin, and his smirk widened. "So, we're starting the meeting with you today?" he asked, his voice carrying a note of mock surprise. "Well, this should be interesting." The comment drew a few chuckles from around the table, and Erin felt a flush creep up her neck. She forced a polite smile, refusing to let his words rattle her. "I believe you'll find the presentation worthwhile," she said evenly, straightening her stack of papers. "Let's hope so," Jared said, raising an eyebrow. "We wouldn't want to waste anyone's time, now would we?" The room fell silent as the CEO entered, signaling the start of the meeting. Erin stood, her pulse quickening as she connected her laptop to the projector. Her slides illuminated the screen, a sleek, well-organized presentation that represented weeks of hard work. She began to speak, her voice clear but measured, explaining the potential impact of her proposal on the company's bottom line. The first few minutes went smoothly. Erin had rehearsed every word, every transition, ensuring her ideas were presented with clarity and confidence. But just as she began to dive into the finer details, Jared interrupted. "Hold on," he said, waving a hand dismissively. "You're saying this strategy will increase user engagement by what, 25%? That seems overly ambitious, don't you think?" Erin paused, her composure intact despite the sharpness of his tone. "Based on our data," she replied, "we believe 25% is not only achievable but conservative. The trends in the market indicate a significant opportunity if we act quickly." Jared leaned forward, his smirk returning. "Trends in the market," he repeated, his voice dripping with skepticism. "Sure, because we all know market trends never steer companies wrong." A few chuckles rippled around the table, and Erin's stomach tightened. She glanced at the CEO, who appeared to be listening intently but didn't intervene. Erin knew she had to stand her ground. "We've conducted extensive testing," she said, her voice firm. "And the numbers are supported by both internal analytics and third-party research. I'd be happy to walk you through the methodology if that would help." Jared rolled his eyes, leaning back in his chair once more. "That won't be necessary. I'm just trying to keep us grounded in reality. It's easy to get carried away with big ideas, especially when you're new to the table." Erin's jaw tightened, but she maintained her composure. She could feel the weight of the room's attention on her, some colleagues looking at her with pity, others with curiosity. She straightened her spine and pressed on, determined not to let him derail her presentation. As she continued, Jared's interruptions became more frequent, each one punctuated by a laugh or a sarcastic remark. "Oh really? That's your solution?" he said at one point, shaking his head. "That's adorable." By the halfway point, Erin's voice was beginning to strain from the effort of staying calm under his relentless attacks. But she refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing her falter. She answered every question with precision, countered every dismissal with facts, and kept her focus on the material she had worked so hard to prepare. Still, Jared's laughter lingered in the air, a constant reminder of the uphill battle she faced. At one particularly tense moment, Jared leaned forward, clasping his hands on the table. "Look, Aaron," he said, his tone almost patronizing. "I get it. You've worked hard on this and I respect the effort. But maybe next time, leave the big ideas to the people who actually have the experience to back them up." The words hung in the air like a slap, and Erin felt her cheeks flush with a mix of anger and humiliation. She could see a few of her colleagues shifting uncomfortably in their seats, their expressions a mix of sympathy and awkwardness. But no one spoke up. No one challenged him. Erin took a deep breath, willing herself to stay calm. She met Jared's gaze, her voice steady but resolute. "Experience is valuable," she said, "but innovation comes from fresh perspectives. Dismissing ideas simply because they come from someone new isn't just unproductive, it's a missed opportunity." The room went silent, the air crackling with tension. For the first time, Jared seemed momentarily caught off guard. But his smirk returned quickly, and he let out a dry laugh. "Well, I'll give you points for courage," he said. "But courage doesn't pay the bills." Erin ignored him, turning back to her slides. She knew she couldn't change his mind, but she wasn't presenting for him. She was presenting for the CEO, for the rest of the team, and for herself. She pushed through the final section of her presentation, laying out her recommendations with as much clarity and conviction as she could muster. When she finally finished, the room was quiet. The CEO leaned forward, his hands steepled as he considered her words. "Thank you, Erin," he said. "You've given us a lot to think about." Jared snorted softly, but the CEO shot him a warning glance. "We'll need to review the details further," the CEO continued, "but I appreciate the work you've put into this. Innovation is what drives this company forward." Erin nodded, her heart still racing as she returned to her seat. She could feel Jared's gaze on her, the smirk still lingering on his face, but she refused to look at him. Instead, she focused on the small victory of making it through the presentation with her dignity intact. As the meeting adjourned, Erin gathered her things, her mind already racing with thoughts of how she could refine her proposal. But as she stood to leave, one of her colleagues, a middle-aged woman named Sarah, touched her arm. "That was impressive," Sarah said softly. "Don't let him get to you. You handled yourself well." Erin managed a small smile. "Thanks," she said. "I just hope it made a difference." Sarah nodded, glancing toward Jared, who was already engaged in another conversation. "It did," she said. "Trust me." Erin left the room feeling a mix of relief and exhaustion. She knew the battle wasn't over, not by a long shot. But she also knew she had taken the first step in proving that her voice deserved to be heard. Erin walked down the hallway, clutching her laptop bag tightly. The weight of the meeting lingered over her like a heavy cloud. Her mind replayed Jared's comments on a loop, the mocking laughter, the condescending remarks, the sheer arrogance in his tone. She clenched her jaw, trying to push it aside, but it was easier said than done. By the time she reached her office, she felt utterly drained. She closed the door behind her and sank into her chair, staring blankly at her computer screen. The adrenaline that had kept her steady during the meeting was wearing off, leaving behind a wave of frustration and doubt. Had she done enough? Had anyone truly listened? A knock at the door broke her train of thought. Erin looked up to see Sarah standing in the doorway, a sympathetic smile on her face. She held 2 steaming cups of coffee in her hands, offering one to Erin. "Thought you might need this," Sarah said, stepping inside. Erin accepted the cup gratefully, letting the warmth seep into her hands. "Thanks," she said, her voice softer than usual. "I think I really do." Sarah took a seat across from her, her expression thoughtful. "You know," she began, "I've been at this company for almost 10 years, and I've seen my fair share of people like Jared. They think they know everything because they've been around the longest, but they don't realize how much they miss by shutting other people out." Erin nodded, staring into her coffee. "It's just frustrating," she admitted. "I spent weeks working on that presentation. I know it has potential. But the way he talks, it's like nothing I do will ever be good enough. Don't let him get in your head, Sarah said firmly. He's loud, but that doesn't mean he's right. The CEO was listening, and so were a lot of the others. They saw the work you put in. Do you really think so? Erin asked, her voice tinged with doubt. I know so, Sarah said with conviction. And if you keep showing up and standing your ground, eventually, even people like Jared will have to take notice. Erin smiled faintly, the weight on her chest lifting ever so slightly. Thanks, Sarah. That means a lot. Sarah nodded and stood, smoothing out her blazer. Hang in there, Esther. You've got this. She gave her a reassuring pat on the shoulder before leaving the office, the door clicking shut behind her. Erin took a deep breath, the words sinking in. She wasn't ready to give up, not yet. If anything, Jared's behavior had only fueled her determination. She opened her laptop, pulling up the slides from her presentation. There was always room for improvement, and she wanted to be ready for any follow-up discussions. Over the next few days, Erin threw herself into her work. She refined her proposal, adding additional data and addressing potential concerns that had come up during the meeting. She reached out to colleagues for feedback, gathering support from those who had expressed interest in her ideas. But Jared's presence loomed large, even outside the boardroom. He made snide comments in passing, his voice just loud enough for Erin to hear. Still trying to sell that pipe dream of yours? He said one morning as he walked by her desk, a smug grin on his face. Good luck with that. Erin ignored him, her fingers tightening around her pen. She refused to let him see how much his words got under her skin. Instead, she channeled her frustration into her work, knowing that the best way to prove him wrong was to succeed. Her efforts didn't go unnoticed. By the end of the week, she received an email from the CEO's assistant requesting a follow-up meeting to discuss her proposal in more detail. Erin's heart raced as she read the message, a mix of excitement and nerves coursing through her. This was her chance to make a real impact. The meeting was scheduled for Monday morning, and Erin spent the weekend preparing. She practiced her presentation in front of the mirror, refining her delivery until every word flowed seamlessly. She knew Jared would likely be there, but this time, she was ready. Monday arrived, and Erin stepped into the conference room with a newfound sense of confidence. The room was smaller than the previous meeting, with only a handful of key decision-makers present. The CEO sat at the head of the table, flanked by Jared and two other senior executives. Jared greeted her with his usual smirk, leaning back in his chair as if he already knew how the meeting would go. But Erin didn't let it faze her. She set up her laptop and began her presentation, her voice steady and self-assured. As she spoke, she noticed a shift in the room. The CEO leaned forward, his attention fully on her. One of the other executives nodded along, occasionally jotting down notes. Even Jared, though still wearing his trademark smirk, seemed to be listening more intently than before. When she finished, the CEO asked a series of thoughtful questions, probing deeper into her proposal. Erin answered each one with clarity, drawing on the extensive research she had done. The discussion was productive, and for the first time, she felt like her ideas were truly being heard. But just as the meeting was wrapping up, Jared spoke up. I have to admit, he said, his tone laced with faux magnanimity, you've clearly put a lot of effort into this. But I still think it's overly ambitious. We've seen plenty of ideas like this come and go, and most of them don't pan out. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to Erin. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her, but she refused to back down. Taking a deep breath, she met Jared's gaze head-on. With all due respect, Jared, she said, her voice calm but firm, the biggest risk isn't trying something new and failing. It's staying stagnant while the world moves forward. This company has the resources and the talent to make this work. What we need now is the vision and the courage to take that step. Her words hung in the air, the tension palpable. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, the CEO nodded slowly, a thoughtful expression on his face. Well said, Erin, he said. I think we should explore this further. Let's set up a timeline for implementation and see how it performs in a pilot program. Erin's heart soared at his words, but she kept her composure, nodding professionally. Thank you, she said. I'm confident it will deliver results. Jared said nothing, his smirk finally fading as he leaned back in his chair. The meeting adjourned shortly after, and Erin left the room feeling a mix of triumph and relief. She had done it. She had stood her ground and proved her worth. Later that afternoon, Erin's phone buzzed with a notification. She glanced at the screen and saw a message from Sarah. "Check this out." It included a link to a video clip. Curious, Erin clicked on it. To her shock, the video was from the meeting that morning. Someone had recorded her response to Jared and posted it online, where it was quickly gaining traction. The caption read, "Young woman shuts down arrogant boss in the most professional way possible." The comments were filled with praise and support, people applauding her poise and eloquence. "This is what leadership looks like," one comment read. "Jared didn't see that coming," said another. Erin's cheeks flushed as she read through the responses. She hadn't expected her words to resonate with so many people, but it was clear that her message had struck a chord. For the first time, she felt not just heard but seen. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a message from the CEO. "Great job today, Erin. Let's keep the momentum going." Erin smiled, her confidence soaring. Jared might have underestimated her, but she had shown him, and everyone else, that she was a force to be reckoned with. The video continued to spread like wildfire over the next few days. Erin couldn't open her phone without seeing notifications about likes, shares, and comments. Colleagues she barely knew were stopping her in the hallway to congratulate her or share their admiration for how she handled Jared. Some even mentioned that the clip had made it onto a popular business news website, accompanied by an article titled, "Corporate Misogyny Gets Shut Down, and It's About Time." At first, Erin felt a mix of pride and apprehension. She hadn't intended for the meeting to go viral, and she didn't know who had recorded the exchange. But as the video continued to gain traction, she realized that it was bigger than just her. The responses weren't just about her performance, they were about something much more universal. People were sharing their own stories of workplace inequality, of being silenced or dismissed, and how much they appreciated seeing someone stand up to it. One evening, as she scrolled through the comments, she came across a message that stopped her cold. It was from a woman she didn't know, and it read, "Thank you for this. I've been dealing with a boss like Jared for years, and seeing you speak up gave me the courage to finally address it. You're an inspiration." Erin stared at the message, her chest tightening. She hadn't thought of herself as an inspiration. She was just trying to do her job, trying to make her voice heard in a room where it so often felt like she didn't belong. But knowing that her actions had made a difference for someone else, it was a feeling she couldn't quite put into words. The next day at work, the atmosphere was noticeably different. People seemed to be looking at Erin with newfound respect, and Jared, for once, was unusually quiet. She passed him in the hallway on her way to the break room, and though he gave her his usual smirk, it lacked its usual edge. If anything, it seemed forced, as though he were trying to maintain a facade of indifference. Inside the break room, Sarah was waiting with 2 cups of coffee, a knowing smile on her face. "You're a bit of a celebrity now, aren't you?" she said, sliding one of the cups toward Erin. Erin rolled her eyes, though she couldn't help but smile. "Don't remind me. I didn't ask for any of this." "No, but you earned it," Sarah said firmly. "And honestly, it's about time someone put Jared in his place. He's been walking all over people for years." Erin took a sip of her coffee, the warmth soothing her nerves. "Do you think this will change anything?" she asked. "I mean, really change anything?" Sarah considered this for a moment. "It's hard to say," she admitted. "People like Jared don't change overnight. But what you did, it's already making waves. People are talking. And sometimes that's the first step." Erin nodded, though she couldn't shake the feeling that the battle was far from over. Jared might have been quiet today, but she knew better than to assume he was backing down. If anything, she suspected he was waiting for the right moment to strike back. Sure enough, Jared didn't stay silent for long. A few days later, Erin was called into a meeting with the CEO and the rest of the leadership team to discuss the next steps for her proposal. As she entered the room, she noticed Jared sitting near the head of the table, his arms crossed and his expression unreadable. The CEO greeted her warmly, motioning for her to take a seat. "Thank you for joining us," he said. "We've been reviewing your updated proposal, and I have to say, it's impressive. We're very interested in moving forward with the pilot program." Erin's heart swelled with pride, but she kept her expression composed. "Thank you," she said. "I'm confident it will deliver the results we're looking for." The CEO nodded, then glanced at Jared. "Jared, you had some concerns about the proposal during our last meeting. Have those been addressed?" Jared sat forward, his smirk making a reappearance. "Some of them," he said. "But I still think we're taking a big gamble here. Sure, the numbers look good on paper, but that doesn't mean they'll translate to real-world results. And if this doesn't work, it's going to cost the company a lot of money and credibility." Erin bit the inside of her cheek, refusing to let his words shake her. She waited for the CEO to respond, but to her surprise, he turned to her instead. "Erin, what's your take on that?" She straightened her shoulders, meeting Jared's gaze head-on. "Every new initiative comes with risks," she said. "But the real question is whether the potential rewards outweigh those risks. In this case, I believe they do. The data we've gathered is strong, and the market trends are clear. If we act now, we have the opportunity to position ourselves as leaders in this space. If we wait, we risk falling behind." Jared opened his mouth to respond, but the CEO raised a hand, cutting him off. "Thank you, Erin," he said. "You've made your case well." Erin could feel Jared's glare burning into her, but she refused to look at him. Instead, she focused on the CEO, who was now addressing the rest of the team. "Let's move forward with the pilot program," he said. "Erin, I'd like you to take the lead on this. Work with Jared's team to coordinate the rollout." The words hit like a thunderclap. Erin's stomach churned at the thought of working closely with Jared, but she nodded professionally. "Of course," she said. "I'll get started right away." The weeks that followed were some of the most challenging of Erin's career. Jared's involvement in the project was as difficult as she'd expected, his condescending attitude and passive-aggressive comments making every meeting a test of her patience. But Erin stayed focused, refusing to let him derail her progress. As the pilot program rolled out, the results began to speak for themselves. User engagement numbers soared, exceeding even Erin's projections. The feedback from customers was overwhelmingly positive, and the company's leadership took notice. The CEO publicly praised Erin during a company-wide meeting, calling her work a game-changer. Jared, meanwhile, grew increasingly quiet. His usual smugness was replaced with a thin veneer of politeness, and though he still found ways to undermine Erin in small ways, his power over her had clearly diminished. But the real turning point came when the video of Erin's viral response reached the desk of a prominent journalist. The journalist reached out to Erin, asking for an interview about her experience and the broader implications of workplace dynamics. At first, Erin hesitated. She wasn't sure if she wanted to draw more attention to herself, especially with Jared still lurking in the background. But after some encouragement from Sarah and a few trusted colleagues, she decided to go for it. The interview was published in a major business magazine, and Erin's story became a rallying cry for women in the workplace. The article highlighted her professionalism, resilience, and the importance of creating environments where all voices are valued. By the time the pilot program officially launched company-wide, Erin's reputation had transformed. She was no longer just the new girl at the table. She was a respected leader, someone whose ideas had proven their worth. As for Jared, his influence within the company continued to wane. Though he still held his title, it was clear to everyone that his days of unchecked arrogance were over. Erin didn't relish his downfall, but she couldn't deny the satisfaction of seeing him finally face the consequences of his behavior. One afternoon, as Erin was packing up her things for the day, Jared appeared at her office door. For the first time, he looked unsure of himself, his usual smirk replaced with a hesitant expression. "I just wanted to say," he began, trailing off. He cleared his throat, avoiding her gaze. "You did a good job." "With the project?" Erin blinked, momentarily taken aback. She studied him for a moment before nodding. "Thank you," she said simply. Jared nodded awkwardly, then turned and walked away. Erin watched him go, a small smile playing on her lips. She didn't need his validation, but it was a sign of how far she had come and how much things had changed. As she left the office that evening, Erin felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in a long time. She had faced the challenges head-on, proving not only her value but also the importance of standing up for what was right. And as she walked into the cool evening air, she knew this was only the beginning. The days following Jared's awkward attempt at an apology passed in a blur of meetings, emails, and project milestones. Erin's pilot program was officially deemed a success, and the results were shared in an internal report that circulated across the company. Her name was highlighted as the project lead, and her innovative approach was credited with boosting both user engagement and revenue projections for the next quarter. For the first time since she joined the company, Erin felt like her voice had made a tangible impact. It wasn't just about the numbers or the accolades, it was about finally feeling like she belonged. The weight of constantly proving herself began to lift, replaced by a quiet confidence that had been building inside her all along. One morning, Erin was called into the CEO's office. The assistant at the front desk greeted her warmly, gesturing for her to go inside. As Erin stepped through the door, she found the CEO sitting behind his desk, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Erin, come in," he said, motioning for her to take a seat. "I've been meaning to talk to you." She sat down, her nerves buzzing slightly despite the progress she'd made. "Is everything all right?" she asked. "More than all right," the CEO said, leaning forward. "Your work on the pilot program has been exceptional. The results speak for themselves, and I've been hearing great feedback from the rest of the team. But that's not the only reason I wanted to meet with you." Erin tilted her head, curiosity piqued. "What is it?" He smiled. "I've been keeping an eye on the impact you've had, not just on this project, but on the culture of the company. That video of your meeting with Jared sparked conversations that we needed to have, conversations about respect, leadership, and the value of different perspectives. I believe we need more voices like yours in leadership roles." Erin blinked, caught off guard. "Leadership roles?" she repeated. "Yes," the CEO said. "I'd like to offer you a promotion. We're creating a new position focused on innovation and strategy, and I think you'd be perfect for it. You'd have more opportunities to shape the company's direction and bring forward ideas like the ones you've already proven can work." Erin's breath caught in her throat. A promotion? She hadn't expected this, not so soon. I don't know what to say," she stammered. "Say yes," the CEO said with a smile. "You've earned it." After a moment of stunned silence, Erin nodded. "Yes," she said, her voice steady. "Thank you. I won't let you down." "I know you won't," the CEO said, standing and extending his hand. Erin shook it, a sense of pride swelling in her chest. She left the office with her mind spinning, already thinking about the possibilities ahead. The news of Erin's promotion spread quickly, and the reactions were overwhelmingly positive. Colleagues stopped by her desk to congratulate her, and Sarah even surprised her with a bouquet of flowers and a handwritten note that read, "You deserve this and more. Here's to breaking barriers." Jared, however, was noticeably absent from the stream of well-wishers. Erin didn't expect him to say anything. After all, he'd spent the better part of their time together trying to undermine her. But as she packed up her things at the end of the day, she heard a knock at her office door. She looked up to see Jared standing there, his hands shoved into his pockets. His usual smugness was gone, replaced by an expression she couldn't quite read. "Can I come in?" he asked. Erin hesitated for a moment before nodding. "Sure." Jared stepped inside, closing the door behind him. He lingered by the wall, looking uncharacteristically unsure of himself. "I heard about your promotion," he said finally. "Congratulations." "Thank you," Erin said, her tone polite but guarded. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, his gaze flickering toward the floor. "Look, I know I've been difficult," he admitted. "And I've said things I probably shouldn't have. But I just wanted to say, I respect what you've done. Even if I didn't always show it." Erin raised an eyebrow, surprised by his words. "Why now?" she asked. "Why say this now?" Jared sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Because I've been thinking about that video," he said. "At first, I was angry it got out. I thought it made me look bad. But the more I watched it, the more I realized. I did that to myself. You stood your ground, and I didn't give you the respect you deserved. That's on me." Erin studied him for a moment, trying to gauge his sincerity. She wasn't sure if he was genuinely apologetic or simply trying to save face, But either way, it felt like a step in the right direction. "Thank you," she said finally. "I appreciate you saying that." Jared nodded, his expression softening. "For what it's worth, I think you'll do great in your new role. And if you ever need anything, well, you know where to find me." With that, he turned and left, leaving Erin to sit in stunned silence. She wasn't sure what to make of the exchange, but she decided not to dwell on it. Jared's opinion no longer held the power over her that it once did. She had proven herself, not just to him, but to everyone. In the weeks that followed, Erin settled into her new role, tackling her responsibilities with the same determination that had gotten her there. She led brainstorming sessions, collaborated with teams across departments, and introduced new initiatives that further solidified the company's position as a leader in innovation. Her ideas weren't just welcomed, they were celebrated. The viral video continued to circulate, inspiring discussions far beyond the walls of her office. Erin received emails and messages from people around the world, sharing their stories and thanking her for speaking up. It was humbling to realize the impact her actions had on others, and it motivated her to keep pushing for change. One evening, as she sat at her desk reviewing a proposal, her phone buzzed with a new email. She opened it to find a message from a young woman named Maya, who worked at a small startup in another city. "Hi Erin," the email began. "I just wanted to reach out and say thank you. I saw the video of your meeting, and it gave me the courage to speak up in my own workplace. I was so scared at first, but when I thought about how calm and confident you were, it gave me the strength to keep going. Because of you, my boss finally listened, and things are starting to change. You made me believe in myself again. Thank you for that." Erin felt a lump rise in her throat as she read the email. She leaned back in her chair, letting the words sink in. It wasn't just about the promotion or the recognition, it was about making a difference, one small step at a time. She typed a reply, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "Hi Maya, thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm so proud of you for standing up for yourself, and I'm honored to know that I could help in some small way. Remember, your voice matters, and the work you're doing is important. Keep going, you've got this." As she hit send, Erin felt a sense of fulfillment she hadn't experienced before. She closed her laptop and stood, looking out the window at the city lights below. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. And she knew there was still so much more to do. She turned off the lights in her office and walked out, her head held high. The future was bright, and Erin was ready to face it, one challenge at a time. The weeks after Erin's promotion were a whirlwind of activity. With her new role as head of innovation and strategy, she suddenly found herself juggling more responsibilities than ever before. It was both exhilarating and overwhelming. Erin spent her days in back-to-back meetings, brainstorming sessions, and strategy discussions, while her evenings were often consumed by emails and planning documents. But despite the long hours, she felt more alive than she had in years. One of her first major initiatives was to expand on the success of her pilot program. The project had been a triumph in its initial phase, but now it was time to scale it across the company's global operations, a task that required meticulous planning and coordination. Erin quickly assembled a team of bright, motivated colleagues who shared her vision, including Sarah, whose support and encouragement had been instrumental from the start. "Okay, team," Erin said one morning as they gathered in a conference room filled with whiteboards and sticky notes. "We've proven that this strategy works. Now we need to figure out how to make it work on a larger scale. That means identifying potential challenges, streamlining processes, and ensuring we're all aligned on the rollout." Sarah nodded, jotting down notes on her tablet. "I think our biggest hurdle will be getting buy-in from the regional teams," she said. "They're used to doing things their own way, and they might be resistant to change." "Agreed," Erin said. "That's why I want to focus on communication and collaboration. We need to show them that this isn't about replacing their efforts, it's about enhancing them. Let's put together a series of workshops to introduce the strategy and get their input." The team spent the next few hours brainstorming ideas, mapping out timelines, and assigning tasks. By the time the meeting ended, Erin felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was the kind of work she had always dreamed of doing, building something meaningful with the support of people who believed in her vision. As the rollout began, Erin encountered her fair share of obstacles. In one region, the local leadership team was openly skeptical of the new strategy, questioning its relevance to their market. In another, technical issues threatened to derail the implementation timeline. And then there were the inevitable moments of self-doubt, those late-night hours when Erin stared at her laptop, wondering if she was truly cut out for this level of responsibility. One particularly challenging day, Erin found herself in a heated video call with the head of a regional office in Europe. The man, a seasoned executive named Klaus, was polite but firm in his opposition to the new approach. "I understand the numbers look good on paper," Klaus said, his tone measured. "But our customers have different needs. I'm not convinced this strategy will resonate with them." Erin took a deep breath, reminding herself to stay calm. "I appreciate your perspective, Klaus," she said, "but I believe this strategy has the flexibility to adapt to regional differences. If we can work together to tailor the implementation to your market, I think you'll see the same positive results we've seen elsewhere." Klaus frowned, clearly unconvinced. "It's a risk," he said, "and I'm not sure it's one we can afford to take." "It's always a risk to try something new," Erin replied, her voice steady. "But it's an even bigger risk to stay the same while the world changes around us. I'm not asking you to implement this blindly. I'm asking for your collaboration to make it work for your customers." There was a long pause as Klaus considered her words. Finally, he nodded. "All right," he said. "Let's give it a shot. But I'll be holding you accountable for the results." Erin smiled, relief washing over her. "That's all I ask," she said. "Thank you, Klaus." Despite the challenges, the rollout gradually gained momentum. Erin's team traveled to regional offices around the world, hosting workshops, gathering feedback, and troubleshooting issues as they arose. Each small victory felt like a step closer to the larger goal, and Erin couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in what they were accomplishing. One evening, as she returned to her hotel room after a particularly productive day, Erin received a text from Sarah. "Check this out," it read, followed by a link to an article. Curious, Erin clicked on it. The article was a glowing profile of the company's recent innovations, with a significant portion dedicated to Erin's leadership and the success of the pilot program. The journalist described Erin as a rising star in the corporate world, praising her ability to inspire collaboration and drive results. Erin read the article twice, her cheeks flushing with a mix of pride and disbelief. She had worked so hard to get to this point, and now the world was starting to take notice. She sent a quick thank you message to Sarah before setting her phone aside and collapsing onto the bed, exhaustion finally catching up with her. As the months went on, Erin began to see the fruits of her labor. The expanded program was yielding impressive results across multiple regions, and the company's leadership was thrilled with the progress. Erin's inbox was flooded with messages from colleagues praising her work, and she was frequently asked to speak at meetings and conferences about her approach to innovation. But the most rewarding moments came from the smaller, quieter interactions. The emails from employees thanking her for listening to their ideas, the regional managers who told her how the new strategy had transformed their teams, and the young women who approached her at events to say she had inspired them. One day, Erin received a handwritten letter from a woman named Priya, who worked in a junior position at a different company. The letter was heartfelt and personal, describing how Priya had been struggling to find her voice in a male-dominated workplace. She had seen Erin's viral video and read about her accomplishments, and it had given her the courage to speak up during a team meeting. To her surprise, her ideas had been well received, and she was now working on a project she had proposed. "I don't know if I would have had the courage to do it without seeing you stand up for yourself," the letter read. "Thank you for showing me that it's possible." Erin's eyes filled with tears as she read the letter. She folded it carefully and placed it in her desk drawer, alongside a growing collection of similar messages. Each one was a reminder of why she did what she did, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever felt unheard or underestimated. Back at the office, the culture was shifting. Jared, though still present, had largely retreated into the background. He rarely spoke during meetings anymore, and when he did, his comments were more measured and constructive. Erin couldn't say whether his change in behavior was genuine or simply a response to the backlash from the viral video, But either way, it was a welcome development. One afternoon, as Erin walked past Jared's office, she saw him sitting at his desk, staring out the window. For a moment, she considered stopping to say something, perhaps to acknowledge the small steps he'd taken to improve. But then she decided against it. Jared's journey was his own, and she didn't need his approval to validate her success. Instead, Erin focused on the future. Her role at the company had expanded far beyond what she had initially imagined, and she was determined to make the most of it. She continued to advocate for innovation, diversity, and collaboration, knowing that the work she was doing had the power to create lasting change. As she left the office that evening, Erin felt a sense of fulfillment she hadn't experienced in a long time. The challenges she had faced, the doubts, the setbacks, the moments of frustration, had all been worth it. She had found her voice, and she was using it to make a difference. The city lights sparkled in the distance as she walked to her car, her heart filled with gratitude and determination. This was just the beginning, and Erin was ready for whatever came next. Erin's career was thriving, but as the weeks passed, she found herself grappling with a new and unexpected challenge: finding balance. With her promotion came an increased workload, more meetings, and a constant stream of messages demanding her attention. Her calendar was a puzzle of overlapping events, and her phone rarely stopped buzzing with notifications. For the first time, Erin realized she was losing sight of the things that used to bring her joy outside of work. The long hours left little room for hobbies, socializing, or even the quiet moments she once cherished. One evening, as she sat at her dining table, finishing yet another proposal while her untouched dinner grew cold, the thought hit her like a wave. When was the last time I did something just for me? The realization unsettled her. Erin had always been ambitious, and she loved the sense of purpose her work gave her. But now, she couldn't help but wonder if she was pouring too much of herself into her job. It wasn't just about proving herself anymore. It was about maintaining the momentum she'd built. And yet, something felt off. The following weekend, Erin decided to take a step back. She turned off her work phone, ignored her emails, and went for a long walk in the park near her apartment. The crisp autumn air filled her lungs, and the golden leaves crunched under her boots as she wandered down the winding paths. For the first time in weeks, she let her mind drift away from deadlines and strategies. She sat on a bench overlooking a small pond, watching the ducks glide across the water. Nearby, a group of children played tag, their laughter echoing through the trees. Erin couldn't remember the last time she'd felt so at peace. As she sat there, she thought about the things she used to love: reading novels, sketching in her notebook, baking cookies on lazy Sunday afternoons. She realized she had pushed those things aside, telling herself she'd get back to them when things settled down. But things hadn't settled down, and she doubted they ever would. If she wanted balance, she'd have to create it herself. That evening, Erin decided to make a change. She pulled out her calendar and carved out blocks of time for herself. No meetings, no emails, no work. It felt strange at first, almost like she was breaking some unspoken rule. But she reminded herself that taking care of her well-being wasn't selfish, it was necessary. The following week, Erin stuck to her plan. On Tuesday evening, she left the office at 5 o'clock sharp, ignoring the pile of tasks waiting for her. At home, she dug out her old sketchbook and spent an hour drawing, letting her pencil glide across the page without worrying about the outcome. The simple act of creating something just for herself felt like a breath of fresh air. On Friday, she met up with an old friend for dinner, something she hadn't done in months. They laughed over pasta and wine, reminiscing about their college days and catching up on each other's lives. Erin felt lighter as she walked home that night, her heart full from the connection she'd been missing. As Erin found her balance, she began to notice a change in herself. She was more focused at work, her mind sharper and more creative. The breaks she gave herself allowed her to recharge, and she approached her responsibilities with a renewed sense of energy. Her team noticed the difference too. "You seem more relaxed lately," Sarah said one afternoon as they prepared for a presentation. "What's your secret?" Erin smiled. "I just realized I needed to make time for myself," she said. "It's easy to get caught up in work, but if I don't take care of myself, I can't give my best to the team." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "That's a good reminder. I think I need to take a page out of your book. Erin felt a small swell of pride. If she could set an example for others, maybe it wasn't just her own life she was improving. One evening, Erin decided to revisit an old passion she hadn't thought about in years: baking. She pulled out her grandmother's recipe book, flipping through the worn pages until she found a recipe for chocolate chip cookies. The familiar scent of vanilla and butter filled her kitchen as she mixed the dough, and she felt a sense of comfort she hadn't realized she'd been missing. When the cookies were done, she packed a few into a tin and brought them to work the next day. Her team's faces lit up as she placed the tin on the table during their morning meeting. "Cookies? What's the occasion?" one of her colleagues asked, grinning as he reached for one. "No occasion," Erin said with a shrug. "Just thought we could all use a little treat." The gesture was small, but it reminded Erin of the importance of creating moments of joy, both for herself and for those around her. It wasn't always about big victories or milestones. Sometimes, it was the little things that made the biggest difference. As Erin continued to navigate her new role, she found herself becoming a mentor to others in the company. Younger employees often sought her out for advice, and Erin made it a point to support them in the same way Sarah had supported her. She shared her experiences, her struggles, and the lessons she had learned along the way. One afternoon, a young analyst named Mia stopped by Erin's office. She looked nervous as she hovered in the doorway, clutching a folder to her chest. "Do you have a minute?" Mia asked hesitantly. "Of course," Erin said, gesturing for her to come in. "What's on your mind?" Mia sat down, fidgeting with the edge of her folder. "I'm working on a proposal for a new project," she said. "It's something I really believe in, but I'm worried it's not good enough. What if no one takes it seriously?" Erin smiled, recognizing the doubt in Mia's voice. It reminded her of how she had felt not so long ago. "Let me tell you something," Erin said. "When I presented my first big idea to the team, I was terrified. I had people doubting me, interrupting me, trying to tear me down. But I didn't let that stop me. I believed in my idea, and I knew it was worth fighting for." Mia nodded, her expression softening. "How did you get through it?" she asked. "I focused on the work," Erin said. "I made sure I knew my material inside and out, so I could answer any question or challenge. And I reminded myself that my voice mattered, even if not everyone agreed. If you believe in your project, don't let fear hold you back. You're capable of more than you think." Mia smiled, a flicker of confidence returning to her eyes. "Thank you, Erin," she said. "That really helps." As Mia left the office, Erin felt a sense of fulfillment. Helping others find their voices was just as rewarding as finding her own. She realized that leadership wasn't just about guiding a team, it was about empowering people to believe in themselves. In time, Erin's life found a new rhythm. Work was still demanding, but she no longer let it consume her. She made time for the things that brought her joy: sketching, baking, spending time with friends, and she encouraged her team to do the same. The balance she had found wasn't perfect, but it was enough to keep her grounded. One evening, as she sat in her living room sketching a new design, her phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "You've created something special here," it read. "I hope you know that." Erin smiled, her heart full. She set down her pencil and looked out the window at the city lights, reflecting on how far she had come. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had been worth every challenge, every late night, every moment of doubt. She had found her voice, her balance, and her purpose, and she knew the best was yet to come.